Today, we're diving into a fascinating public health puzzle that was uncovered inside a single hospital in Ethiopia. It's a story that starts with a problem we think we know, but it takes us to a really surprising conclusion about our daily lives. And let's just start with one number, 44%. Let that sink in for a second. That is the percentage of heart patients at this one hospital who had dangerously low levels of physical activity. A number that high, well, it basically screams for an explanation. And that's our first big piece of the puzzle here. We all kind of know that being inactive is bad for us, right? But what this story shows is how a huge global problem can look totally different, almost unrecognizable, when you zoom way in on just one community. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. When we talk about cardiovascular diseases, or CVDs, we're talking about a whole group of issues with the heart and blood vessels. And yeah, as the source material points out, they are the #1 killer worldwide. No contest. Okay, now here's where things get really interesting. Remember that 44%? We'll compare that to the global average, which is about 27.5%. We're not talking about a small difference here. This is a huge, glaring gap. It's a signal that something really specific is going on. So, that leads us right to the big question, the one we're going to try to answer today. What is really going on inside this one hospital to cause such a high rate of inactivity among the very people who need to be active the most? And to answer that, we have to go right to the source. We're heading inside Desi Referral Hospital in Ethiopia. So here's how the researchers tackle this. They did what's called a cross-sectional study. They looked at 91 heart disease patients and used a standard questionnaire from the World Health Organization, a really reliable tool, to measure their physical activity in 3 main parts of their lives: their work, how they get around, and, their free time. And you'll see this term METS pop up. It stands for metabolic equivalence. Don't worry, it's actually super simple. It's just a way to measure how much energy an activity takes. So the more you move, the higher your METS. Easy enough, right? All right, let's get to the good stuff, the alarming findings. This is where the data really starts talking, and believe me, it has a pretty urgent story to tell. And here it is, the big one. That number we started with, a full 44%, almost half, of these heart patients are in the low physical activity group. I mean, think about that. The single largest group is the one living at a level of inactivity that's putting their lives in serious, serious danger. But who exactly is in that 44%, right? That brings us to our next question. Who is most at risk? So the researchers started slicing up the data, looking at the demographics to see if any patterns jumped out. And boy, did a pattern jump out. The first one was just crystal clear. When it came to age, physical activity didn't just go down a little bit. It basically dropped off a cliff. Just look at this trend. It's wild. For folks in their late 30s and early 40s, about a third were inactive. Okay. But then you jump to the very next age bracket, 45 to 54, and it doubles. We're talking 2/3 of them are inactive. And then for those 55 and older, a staggering 75%. That's 3 out of every 4 people. So when you put it all together, 2 really clear groups emerged. The most active, younger men. And the least active, the ones facing the biggest risk, older women. They were getting hit by a double whammy of both age and gender. So this just makes the mystery even deeper, right? We know who is at risk, but we still don't really know why. And that's what we're digging into next, our daily routines, our health. Because the reasons behind these numbers, well, they are not at all what you might expect. I mean, you have to wonder, what's really causing this? When most of us think about exercise, our minds go straight to, hitting the gym, going for a run, playing a sport. But was a lack of gym time really the issue here? And the answer was a huge, resounding no. The stats were super clear. There were 2 things that were massive predictors of inactivity: not getting enough physical activity at work and not getting enough from just getting around, transportation. And here's the real kicker. A lack of recreational activity, it wasn't even a statistically significant factor at all. And that totally lines up with other research, right? The study points to another paper that found that something as simple as active travel, we're talking walking or cycling to get where you need to go, that alone was linked to an 11% drop in cardiovascular risk. So yeah, these little daily things, they add up in a big way. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. For this group of people, physical activity wasn't really a choice you make in your free time. It wasn't about finding an hour to go to the gym. It was literally woven into the fabric of their day-to-day survival, getting to work and the physical nature of that work itself. Okay, so what do we do with all this? What's the bigger picture here? That brings us to our final section, the path forward. What can this one hospital story really teach us about tackling this massive global health problem? All right, let's just quickly recap what we've learned. 1. Inactivity among these heart patients is at a crisis level, way higher than the global average. 2. Women and older adults are the ones in the most danger. 3. And this is the big one, real-world activity comes from work and travel, not from the gym. And that leads to 4. If you want to fix this, the solutions have to be built into people's everyday lives. And that leaves us with one last, kind of challenging thought to chew on. This study really highlights just how critical things like a physical job or an active commute can be. So it forces all of us, everywhere, to ask a really modern question. If our daily grind is what keeps us moving, what happens when that grind disappears? What happens when more of us work from home or when our jobs become less physical? That's the real challenge this story from one hospital in Ethiopia poses for the entire world. Thanks for joining me.